What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Sunday, January 4th, 2026, and I have some breaking news to share with you guys. Right now it is 17:46 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have a developing story to report to you. So, last night, in the middle of the night, a large number of U.S. military aircraft flew from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, to the United Kingdom for some reason. As many as 10 C-17 Globemasters flew to the RAF Fairford base in the UK, and here you can actually see the flight plan for all these planes. So you can see here the C-17s on January 3rd taking off from Campbell Army Airfield going to RAF Fairford, and we're hearing as many as 10 of them. I also heard some reports today that AC-130 gunships were moved to the UK, so I don't know if this is related to Iran and the current coup d'etat that's underway. Remember that Trump promised to support the protesters, the people that are trying to overthrow Khomeini right now. If the Iranian government started shooting at them, he said that the U.S. military is ready to defend. So I don't know if this is related to that, but C-130s and C-17s flying en masse to the United Kingdom overnight last night. Very, very strange. Another interesting thing that happened earlier today is we had two U.S. Navy sub-hunters patrolling the coast of Ireland and the UK. This is very unusual for two of them to take off from Mildenhall and fly out to the North Atlantic here off the coast of Ireland and then fly back. So something is definitely going on. My guess is the Trump administration is getting ready to intervene in Iran and to support the coup d'etat to overthrow Khomeini. Maybe they're going to actually try to kidnap and capture Khomeini and bring him back to the U.S. like they did with Maduro. Maybe Netanyahu and Trump discussed capturing Khomeini alive, and maybe Maduro was like the practice run, and if it went well with Maduro, they're going to do the same thing with Khomeini. We're going to have to wait and see. Also, we're hearing that North Korea tested hypersonic missiles off the coast of the Korean Peninsula yesterday, and apparently they launched two of these hypersonic missiles into the East Sea, and Japan said that their trajectories were very unusual, and South Korea's presidential office called an emergency meeting. Okay, so this is very serious, an emergency meeting with Japan, South Korea, and the U.S. over this hypersonic missile launch, and it was confirmed today by North Korean state media. Okay, so North Korea is pushing ahead with their weapons programs, trying to make a statement probably to Trump that we're not going to become Maduro and you're not going to come to North Korea and kidnap us. And that's probably what that was about. And we're hearing also that several Iranian government websites are offline, including those of multiple ministries and the Tehran municipal portal. So that Tehran is the capital of Iran, so their municipal website of their capital is down, and multiple government agencies in Iran are reporting that their websites are down. So clearly, probably Western cyber attacks going on. Yesterday, there were more violent clashes across Iran between protesters and riot police. There was also this crazy video showing some of the protesters burning down a billboard of the Iranian president. Check this out. So that's a billboard on a highway, and some guy takes a Molotov cocktail and throws it on the billboard of, I think that's Pezeshkian, the president of Iran. So the situation is escalating over there in Iran, and right now we have a U.S. nuclear war command and control plane off the coast of Texas in the Gulf of America, and it actually turned its transponder off, but these planes are used to send out codes to submerged nuclear armed submarines, typically targeting codes, but they can also send out launch codes. So something's definitely brewing for this thing to be up in the air over the Gulf of America, probably sending out codes to submerged subs here. And then we also have this massive movement of aerial refuelers from, looks like New Jersey, back to, looks like Washington. In Spokane, there's the big aerial refueler base there, Fairchild. They took off from, looks like probably Fort Dix in New Jersey or McGuire, and then went back to Fairchild. This is probably related to the Maduro and Venezuela operation. They're probably just returning back to their home base after supporting the operation against Maduro. I'm going to share some details of that in just a minute here. So we have a bunch of different news clips here of Trump. I want you to listen to what he had to say in this news conference he gave yesterday. But basically, he said that for now, the U.S. is going to run Venezuela to ensure that the regime of Maduro doesn't regain power, and to make sure that there's a stable, smooth transition to whoever's going to take over, whether it's Machado, the Nobel Prize winner, or someone else, or they're going to hold new elections. I don't know, but Trump is saying that they're going to run Venezuela for now, and that U.S. boots will be on the ground in Venezuela. He said he's not afraid of putting U.S. boots on the ground in Venezuela, especially to protect oil facilities. He also said that the oil companies are going to come in and rebuild all the oil wells and infrastructure for refining and storage. And as you guys probably know, Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves in the world. So this is a huge geopolitical chess move, and I'm sure Russia and China are fuming mad that the U.S. has captured the world's largest oil supply. Okay, because prior to this, Russia and China had control of Venezuela. Maduro was their puppet. Now the U.S. has control. Okay. So let me just play some clips here of Trump so you can hear what he had to say himself. But it sounds like for now, Venezuela is basically going to become an oil colony of the United States. And who knows? I mean, maybe Venezuela will get territory status like Puerto Rico or Guam.
U.S. ends up administrating Venezuela for years,
Well, it won't cost us anything because the money coming out of the ground is very substantial, so it's not going to cost us anything. We want safety there. We want to be surrounded by countries that aren't housing all of our enemies all over the world.
U.S. ends up administrating Venezuela.
So he's saying housing all of our enemies. He's talking about Russia and China and the cartels, because Venezuela did allow Russian and Chinese warships to dock there. And obviously China was buying oil from Venezuela, so now that's going to cut off China's oil supply. And they're going to be more reliant on the Middle East and Russia for oil. So that's going to definitely hurt China a little bit. But huge geopolitical chess move. And here's Trump again.
Well, we're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing, but that's going to be paid. And we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be. As you know, it was just a minor flow. It was actually a minor flow for what they have.
He said, we're going to get the oil flowing to what it should be. Okay, so all the big American oil companies are going to come in, and it's going to be just like a free reign to drill wherever they want. They're going to really pull a lot of the oil out of the ground in Venezuela. and Trump basically saying that the substantial amount of oil in Venezuela will pay for the costs of running the country and providing security and everything else. Okay, that's probably why those Marines are there, to provide stabilization and security for not just the oil wells but the government. And here's another clip of Trump.
The American armada remains poised in position, and the United States retains all military options until United States demands have been fully met and fully satisfied. All political and military figures in Venezuela should understand what happened to Maduro can happen to them, and it will happen to them if they aren't just, fair, even to their people.
So he said that the Armada is still in position and they're ready to use force if necessary again. Here's Trump again.
Yes.
Is the U.S. aware of the location of opposition leader Machado, and have you been in contact with her?
No, we haven't. No, we haven't.
Mr. President, on Monday.
Oh, I think it would be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support within or the respect within the country. She's a very nice woman, but she doesn't have the respect to be the leader.
So they asked her about Machado, who everybody thought was going to take over the Venezuelan opposition leader, and he said that she doesn't have the respect inside the country, which is true. The cartels and the leftovers from the Maduro regime, they obviously wouldn't want her to be in power right away, and it would look like obvious regime change, and so potentially it could be a threat to her and the stability of Venezuela. So that's common sense, but he's basically saying that Machado will not be taking over at this moment in time, maybe in the future. Here's another clip of Trump from Fox News. Take a listen to what he has to say.
But he was in a house that was more like a fortress than a house. It had steel doors. It had what they call a safety space, where it's, solid steel all around. He didn't get that space closed. He was trying to get into it, but he got bum rushed so fast that he didn't get into that. We were prepared. We had, massive blowtorches and everything else that you need to get through that steel, but we didn't need it. He didn't make it to that area of that.
So he said the house was heavily fortified, and we do know that the Delta Force made a mock-up of his fortress, his compound, and they practiced entering it and capturing Maduro. They rehearsed everything, just like how SEAL Team 6 rehearsed capturing bin Laden. But he said that he tried to go to a safe room and he didn't make it there.
Moving forward for Venezuela, what do you think is next for the Venezuelan people now that you have removed Maduro so that he can face American justice?
Well, we're making that decision now. We can't take a chance on letting somebody else run and just take over where he left or left off. So we're making that decision now. We'll be involved in it very much. And we want to do liberty for the people. We want to, have a great relationship. I think the people of Venezuela are very, very happy because they love the United States. They were run by essentially a dictatorship or worse. It couldn't have been worse. It was a terrible thing that was taking place in Venezuela. But look, tremendous numbers of people were being killed through drugs. And what they did to our country in sending prisoners and people from mental institutions and drug lords and everything, they sent them by the hundreds of thousands of people into our country.
So Trump basically saying that the U.S. is going to run Venezuela to make sure it's stable. But one thing we can all agree on, whether you agree with this action or not, whether you like Trump or not, we can all agree that, yes, part of this was related to drugs and controlling the flow of drugs to the U.S., but let's be honest, the world's largest oil reserves are in Venezuela, and this was a geopolitical chess move by the United States. Trump wants to ensure that America has the oil it needs to fuel the U.S. military, and to me, that's actually very concerning if Trump is worried that we don't have enough oil for our military and for our society. That tells me that potentially he's worried about World War III with China and Russia. And so he wanted to move and secure this oil supply for our military and for our country in the event that we go to war with China over Taiwan and we go to war with Russia in Europe. You know, we need to have our own independent oil supply that's secure, and we're not reliant on other countries that may cut off our oil because we're at war with Russia or at war with China, and they're going to say, well, we don't want to supply oil to you anymore, or you're going to have to pay a huge premium because you're at war with Putin or Xi Jinping, and we don't want to be involved. We don't want to help you. We don't want to be party to that conflict, so we're going to cut that oil off, and then we're screwed. Yes, we do have a lot of oil here in the U.S., in Texas, in the Gulf states, in the platforms in the Gulf, in Pennsylvania, in Alaska. There's a lot of oil. Okay, Canada has some, a large amount as well, but it's still not enough. We need more, okay? And so Trump basically moved in and secured this oil supply for the U.S. military and for our country through the next 50 to 100 years or more. Okay, this is enough oil to supply the U.S. indefinitely, especially if we go to war. And remember, oil is like food and water for the U.S. military, for any country. You know, all the fancy technology is great, the avionics, the electronics, all that whiz-bang stuff is great, but at the end of the day, you know, you need food, you need water, and you need oil, okay? Oil is critical for any military, any country, okay, at this stage of our history as human beings, okay? And we're hearing that more than 150 U.S. military aircraft were involved in last night's military operation against Venezuela. And if you were watching my live stream, I was showing you guys some of the initial videos of the Chinooks and the Apaches and the Blackhawks flying over the skyline of Caracas. And turns out those were the helicopters that were involved with capturing Maduro. And basically all the bombs that were dropped were done to provide cover to capture Maduro. So they were bombing all the different military bases. They were basically providing covering fire for the Delta Force to go in under cover fire to capture Maduro and exfiltrate him. Okay, but we have some detailed statements here from the U.S. Chief of the General Staff, Dan Kane. He's the top military advisor to Trump. He's the top general. Okay, so let's listen to what he had to say here.
The force included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones.
So remember, in the days and weeks leading up to this, I was showing you guys the pictures of those F-22s and F-35s that were piling up in Puerto Rico. And specifically, the Vermont Air National Guard moved a bunch of F-22s down from Vermont to Puerto Rico like a week or two before Christmas. Well, now we know why they did that. And remember, I was telling you guys that that's a huge red flag for Vermont to randomly move F-22s. They don't move F-22s out of Vermont that often. The last time they did that was during the Ukraine war, about 2 years into the Ukraine war, when NATO was afraid that Russia might strike Poland. They moved F-22s from Vermont to Poland to kind of send a message to Russia, okay? But they don't do it too often, so this is, another thing to kind of put in your mental tactical notebook, okay, in your head in the future. If we hear about F-22s being moved somewhere from Vermont, chances are something's about to go down in that area. But let me just play this for you.
Aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones. As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area. The goal of our air component is, was, and always will be to protect the helicopters and the ground force and get them to the target and get them home. As the force crossed the last point of high terrain where they'd been hiding in the clutter, we assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise. As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
So that was actually just a few minutes before I went live to cover it. I went live at 1:15, and the first videos were coming out on social media like around 1:05, 1:10. So social media quickly reacted and started posting the videos of the bombs dropping. So that's pretty remarkable. But 1:01 a.m. is when this happened.
Or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time. And the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit but remained flyable, and as the president said earlier today, all of our aircraft came home.
Okay, so one aircraft was hit. We don't know the details. Was it just a stray round? Was it some kind of anti-aircraft missile? It probably was just a stray round, because if it was able to fly out, probably just a stray round that hit it. But very impressive work by the U.S. military. Whether you agree with Trump or not, you have to admit that the U.S. military is the best in the world. They're a professional fighting force, and if they can do this to Maduro, they can do this to Khomeini. They could probably even pull this off with Putin, and even maybe not Xi Jinping. Maybe Xi Jinping too, I don't know. But probably Kim Jong-un, Putin, they should all be scared right now. And a CIA source inside the Venezuelan government helped track Maduro's location along with stealth drones. So that's where they were able to find out where Maduro was, is through a CIA field worker, essentially, that was embedded in the Venezuelan government. And I told you guys that would really be the only way they would be able to find out where he is through a mole. Okay, and so they had someone close to Maduro that knew where he was at. And then here we have a video of Trump saying he's not thrilled with Putin, and he looks pretty pissed off. I know he's said this multiple times, so you got to take this with a grain of salt. We know Trump changes his mind with Putin on a daily basis. One day he loves him, one day he hates him. But for him to publicly say this right after he captured Maduro, he was clearly sending a message to Putin, and Rubio was also saying the same thing, kind of echoing what Trump said, okay, that, putting every dictator around the world on notice, every country on notice that, hey, we can do whatever we want, we can come in, we can kidnap you, we can take your oil, okay, so don't push us, don't piss us off, so he was clearly trying to scare Putin here, okay? So let me just play this for you.
No, we didn't. We never spoke about Maduro.
Are you mad at him right now? I mean, there's this
I'm not thrilled with Putin. I'm not thrilled with Putin. He's killing too many people. No, we didn't. We never spoke about Maduro.
Are you mad at him right now? I mean, there's this
I'm not thrilled with Putin. I'm not thrilled with Putin. He's killing too many people.
He's killing too many people, okay? We're also hearing that the New York Times and the Washington Post were notified about this raid before it happened, but they did not publish the information because they didn't want to interfere with the operation. So as bad as the Washington Post and the New York Times are for their politics, their left wing, it was good that they didn't do that. It would have endangered our troops. So hats off to them for doing the right thing, even though I politically disagree with them. And Trump said that U.S. troops won't enter Venezuela if Maduro's vice president does what we want. Okay, and it looks like that's not going to happen because the vice president, who was already sworn in, Delcy Rodriguez, she already said that Venezuela is not going to become a colony of the U.S. Okay, so it's not looking too good for her, and it looks like it could be a little bit rough the next couple days. The U.S. may have to go back in and bomb a couple more targets. If that does happen, I will go live. I will post video updates. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you have the notifications turned on. There's a bell icon. Click the bell icon, select all, so you get notified when I go live. Also, follow me on Telegram and Twitter. I post all my updates over there. The links to my Telegram and Twitter are in the description. Also, I have an app for Google for Android. You can download my app for Android, and I believe it's also still available for Apple iPhone. And my app lets me send updates to you directly to your phone, including emergency messages when things are going down. So when this whole situation happened, I was sending out alerts like crazy to everybody with my app, and they were notified of everything. Okay, so definitely check out my app, and it also links all my videos and streams, so you'll never miss a video or a stream. And the Colombian president was threatened by Trump. Trump said he has cocaine mills and they're sending it into the U.S. So, yes, he has to watch his behind, okay, his ASS. Trump also said not a single American was killed, not one piece of military equipment was lost. So it's going to be very interesting the next couple weeks what's going to happen with Iran. You know, how Russia and China are going to respond. Is China now going to make a move against Taiwan? Is Russia going to attack the Baltics? I think things have now just gotten a lot more serious, a lot more dangerous on the world stage after Trump made this very bold move to capture Maduro. The Russians may withdraw from peace talks with Ukraine because they may say in the coming days, don't be surprised if they put out a statement saying we're not going to discuss peace with the U.S. anymore because the U.S. is not credible as a negotiator, as a mediator, because they're invading other countries, taking their oil and kidnapping the leadership. So we're not going to consider the U.S. as a credible mediator anymore. And so that's what Russia's going to do. They're going to say that. I'm just waiting the day when they're going to say that, and they're going to announce that they're withdrawing from peace talks with Ukraine, and I think it's going to happen in the coming weeks. I guarantee it. Mark my words, okay? And Trump was asked if Cuba is next. He said that in Cuba, the people suffered for many years. He said, I think Cuba is something that we're going to end up talking about because they're a badly failing nation. Also, we're hearing that 20 helicopters took part in the operation to capture Maduro, and they took off from several different areas, several different bases. So they didn't all leave like Puerto Rico en masse. They kind of maybe came from, you know, different countries in Latin America where, you know, we have agreements with them to station equipment. And there was a U.S. cyber attack that caused a blackout in Caracas. You remember a couple of weeks ago when there were these random blackouts in Caracas? Well, now it turns out that that was a U.S. cyber attack. And we're also hearing that the operation was originally planned for New Year's Eve. Okay, they were originally going to do this on New Year's Eve, but it looks like the weather wasn't good. That's what Dan Kane said, okay, that the weather was not favorable and they had to wait for the weather. And the new Venezuelan president, Delcy Rodriguez, the former vice president, demanded Saturday the immediate release of Maduro and his wife. She said, "We demand the immediate release of President Nicolas Maduro and his wife," Rodriguez said Saturday afternoon during a session of the National Defense Council that was broadcasted by state television news. She called Maduro the sole president of Venezuela alongside other senior officials. Rodriguez described the capture of Maduro as a kidnapping, said that violations of international law were committed, and accused U.S. forces of having savagely attacked Venezuela's territorial integrity. So does that sound like someone that wants to cooperate with the U.S.? I don't think so. We're going to end up having to go back in there. And she also added that the Venezuelan government will issue a decree declaring a state of emergency. So she's declaring martial law. She called on the public to prepare to defend the country without providing details. We are calling for the defense of life. Not a single Venezuelan man or woman should remain on the sidelines. So maybe the U.S. is going to send Marines in, and she's calling for basically guerrilla warfare against the U.S. Marines. I want to read to you what some of the world leaders said. So the foreign minister of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, discussed the situation with the Belarusian foreign minister, and they both emphasized the need to immediately release Maduro and reinstate him as the head of state, according to the Russian foreign ministry. So they're not happy. The British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said he would continue talking to U.S. counterparts about a transition to democracy. We regarded Maduro as an illegitimate president, and we shed no tears about the end of his regime, he wrote on X. French President Emmanuel Macron said Maduro had gravely undermined the dignity of his own people. Macron added that France wishes for a transition to democracy to be overseen by Edmundo Gonzalez, the former candidate in the disputed 2024 election for president. The EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, President of the EU, said she was following the situation very closely. She added that any solution must respect international law and the UN Charter. Brazilian President Lula da Silva called the U.S. strike on Venezuela a serious affront to the country's sovereignty. The attack crossed an unacceptable line. The Cuban president slammed what he called a criminal attack by the U.S. on Venezuela. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum shared a statement that her government strongly condemns and rejects the attack. The president of Argentina, Javier Milei, an ally of Trump, appeared to welcome the capture of Venezuela's leader with a message on X saying, "Freedom advances, long live freedom." And the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman said that China was deeply shocked and strongly condemns the U.S. blatant use of force against the sovereign state. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I might be back later on with another update, so make sure you have the notifications turned on. I do have my 24/7 live stream running right now, so you can listen to the U.S. nuclear codes throughout the day. We knew this was going to happen roughly 24 to 72 hours before it did. I actually posted on X. If you go to my X account, I have it pinned to the top. On January 2nd, I said something big is going to happen within the next 24 to 72 hours. We're going to wake up to headlines of something big. And that was all because we were monitoring the U.S. strategic and nuclear forces that were transmitting codes. And we knew that these codes were abnormal. There was a lot of them, and there was a lot of abnormal characteristics, and we knew something was going down. So you got to follow the 24/7 streams so you get heads up against everybody else. And my excellent moderators update the chat throughout the day with breaking news. Okay, so that's another advantage to the streams. But until the next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere. And this update was sponsored by EMP Shield. Guys, EMP Shield has created a special discount just for you, the listeners of the NYPrepper channel. If you go to empshield.com and use the promo code NYPrepper, you can get 15% off your entire order. And why do you need an EMP Shield? Well, this is a special device to protect your vehicle, your RV, your solar generators, your radios from an electromagnetic pulse, which could be caused by a solar flare or potentially a rogue country like North Korea detonating an electromagnetic pulse weapon over the United States that's mounted onto a satellite. So protect your vehicles, protect your RV, protect your radios, protect your generators with an EMP shield. Use my promo code NYPrepper to get 15% off. Installation is super simple. This is a veteran-owned business, 100% American-made, and the EMP shields have been tested by the military, okay? And free shipping is included to the entire continental United States. And the link and the promo code are in the description below this video.